We all remember recess growing up in school. Recess was a time of day where you could have all the conversations that you could not have while in class. Recess is where you had the real conversations. And real conversations we're going to have. In each episode of the Recess podcast, I'm going to have real conversations explaining students and school. I'm David McGuire, and I'll be your host. It's recess time, y'all. What's up, everybody? Episode 15 of the Recess Podcast. I'm your host, David McGuire, and this is titled Surviving Online Learning. And it's going to be a good one because I got my family with me and a distant cousin, but a close cousin, still distant. But I got my family with me. It's taken me 15 daggone episodes, but NDK12 is here, and we're excited. We're going to talk about online learning. We're going to have us a good old time, and we hope that you will engage with us. Again, like this, share this, jump in the comments. We would love for you to engage with us, but we're going to have a conversation about online learning because we have all experienced this since March, and so we're excited to be with you. So we'll start with introduction. We'll start with my man, Andrew. Andrew, I finally got you on, man. I'm excited for you to be here. So tell the folks who you are, how many years in education, the craziest thing that's happened to you in online learning. That you can share, right? You don't want to share that you can't share, but what you can share.
So I'm Andrew Pillow. I'm a history teacher by trade, currently teaching math. I've been in education for about 10 years. And the craziest thing that happened to me while engaging in e-learning, you just have a lot of pets. Everybody's got a pet. So I have a cat, and if the cat sees me paying attention to something other than like itself, it's gonna jump in there, and the kids love it, but it really actually is like a big distraction. Like it takes them forever to get back on track once that cat jumps in. Then everybody want to show their pets, it turns into show and tell. So I just had to lock the cat upstairs.
I've seen cats, I've seen dogs, I've seen birds. Yeah. Teacher mine got a bird. I've seen some. It's definitely, that is true. You see everybody's pets. Who's next? Do we go with family? Okay, there we go. Distant cousin.
My name is Nakia Garland. I teach English 12, and I have been in education. This is my 21st year.
What's the craziest thing that's happened in online learning? What's happened?
I've had several. The most recent one involved me contacting students via email to inquire about their not showing up in class. Mm-hmm. And I got a response from one of my students, and she said, well, I have something to do every day at 2:00, so I can't attend your class. She said, but I will do your work. So that's
wow. I miss high school. It's responses like that makes me miss high school.
Yes. So I just found that be very different. But we're going to roll with it.
I'd be like, excuse the hell out of me. I feel like I followed you on Twitter for a while and I feel like I knew you, right? But didn't know you. So it's good to have you on and engage with you. And then last but not least.
Oh, hey, I'm Shantae Barnes, known online as Educator Barnes. This is my 15th year in education. I'm currently a middle school academic dean. I supervise English department, special area department, used to be an English teacher, literacy coach, librarian, English learner teacher, did all things. Craziest thing with e-learning has to do with my children. I have twin sons that are in 4th grade. And at first we had them on the live lessons together on one screen. That wasn't working because they were poking each other. So we put them on separate desks, separate computers, and they appeared to be focusing, only for me to check my kids' inbox account on Canvas to find out that they have been sending emojis back and forth to each other while they were allegedly participating in online learning because the teacher blocked like the Zoom chat, so they couldn't like talk in private messages. So they just private messages in Canvas. And so I get in there and there's just like random letters. There's not even sentences. It's just like a whole bunch of random emojis going back and forth during the class. So that is so I thought, man, my kids are doing this. What are my students in my school doing? I think they're paying attention. Are they really just messaging each other on a cell phone or in another app? It made me have a lot of questions.
Your son's teachers were smart by blocking the chat. We have not blocked the chat. And so, yeah, that's another story, this chat. chat is. And the guy, I don't even want to imagine the high school chat. If the high school chat is open, is it open?
No, thank goodness.
Oh, thank goodness. Oh, God.
Yes, it's been disabled.
Okay, we'll go. Whoo. So that's good. So if you're watching this video, if you're an educator, a parent, a student, jump in the comments, share with us the craziest thing that's happened to you during online learning, and we are going to get that on the screen. Again, this is a Recess podcast, so we're going to jump in. So we're going to originally, we were going to do a little tribute, talk about the impact of Black Panther and the death of Chadwick Boseman. We're going to definitely save that for the end, probably close out with that. But I want to share something. So I had an opportunity to write a piece, was told about a story of a parent. And so if you want to check out the story, it's on citizen.ed, but I titled it, This School Really Called the Police on a Black Child for Playing with a Toy Gun on the Camera. So I hope you check out and read it, but give you a little bit of context. So a young man, a Black child, was playing with a toy gun. It was neon green and orange. And the teacher told the principal, and the principal called the police on the child and sent the police to the child's home without telling the parent. And in addition to that, the principal shared with the police officer that the child had been in some trouble. And the school suspended the boy for 5 days. And said, well, we hope this is a lesson, meaning the officer showing up to his house. So listen, we don't have to tell this history, but we know the history of police and Black boys with toy guns, right? You just go back to Tamir Rice and things like that. But just from educators, a parent, Black people, like when you hear something like that, what's that make you think of, to hear the police being called over a toy gun on an online setting? Anybody want to jump in with their thoughts?
I would just say, now as a school administrator, my first pushback would have been to the teacher, like, what did you say? Because first of all, it's a toy. Point blank period is a toy. And I've seen all types of stuff on Zoom. Blankets, pillows, random pens, like you said, pets. And so my first response is to say, hey, it seems like you're distracted. Could you put that away? To me, that should have ended the conversation. If you were concerned that the kid was going to bring a toy back to Zoom, then you could contact the parent and say, hey, your child was playing with a toy on Zoom. I just want to remind you, I need their attention. Like, that should have ended the conversation right there. There shouldn't have been a suspension, the police call, none of that should have ever happened. And I also think if it was a white child, would the police have been called? If the child didn't have a discipline background, would the police not have been called and the kid got suspended? And then we're suspending people for online learning. So we're just going to let you just stay at home and do nothing now. I just don't understand.
That was the part that stood out to me.
I agree. From what I read, the gun was clearly identifiable as a toy gun because I think it was green and orange. Yeah. So I agree with you, Shantae. That could have been handled in-house, literally. And it just makes me wonder. I wonder if the teacher was a Karen, because no pun intended, that was jumping the gun. Like, I just, like you said, and even me teaching high school, I see all types of things on camera that I don't really want to see. And I just ask the student to put it away or cover up or whatever the issue might be. Mm-hmm. Because they've already missed out on so much school anyway. So I don't really understand the desire to suspend them for 5 days.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
I'm not sure I would have said anything, to be honest with you. I mean, like, I'm trying not to be hyperbolic here, but when I tell you that I really don't care what they're doing, like, as long as they're doing their work, I mean, they're in their house. Right. So we have kids who are laying down, like, some kids have their pets with them the whole time. Like, that, I don't feel right, reprimanding them for behavior that isn't aggressively disruptive, like in the chat. Now, if he was like, had the gun and he was pointing at the screen and like talking to other kids or something like that, then that's one thing. I probably would have told him to put it up, or I probably would have turned his camera off, honestly, is normally what I do. But it's just hard for me to imagine a scenario where it would get beyond my locus of control. It just seems very heavy-handed.
And what happened to calling the parent? If you wanted to do something, right? If it really moved you, like you said, if it moved you to be a principal in that moment, that's not a principal moment, first of all. But it's not. But if it moved you to really be a principal in that moment, call the parent. Hey, Miss So-and-so. Hey, Mr. So-and-so. Your scholar has a gun on camera. Can you tell him to put it up? Right? Like if you really wanted to be a principal in that moment. But like you said, like what the kid wasn't pointing it at anybody or anything like that. Like, so that's not a moment. But the kid, to your point, it definitely sounded like a very Karen-ish moment in that situation. But yeah, I thought that was just crazy. And Shantae, to your point, like, you about to suspend the kid? Like, what are you even like? What is the consequence? So you're suspended for you're banned. You're 5 days suspended from Zoom. That's your punishment, right? Okay, right? Like, I don't know. But you know, again, I've learned in this principleship, there's a lot of principals that just like doing principal stuff. Like, and that's a real principle thing. Like, come on, man. Like, we know you're the leader, right? And then you call the police, and then shame on those officers for even going. Like, it was identified, you said, as a toy gun. So shame on those officers for going. But again, when it comes to black kids and toy guns, it seems officers feel empowered. So I just wanted to share that. Read the rest of the story. It's ever changing. A lot has transpired ever since I wrote it just yesterday. So just be on the lookout. She, I know, talked to Tracy. She might be on the show with Chris one day soon. So that'll be an interesting conversation to hear from the mom's perspective just about that whole ordeal. So we're going to jump in to the first, I guess, question you could say. So I want each of you to take me back to March, because I remember March for me. And I remember what that was like. So in your own frame of reference, just take me back to March. Shantae, I'm gonna start with you, because I think we had a conversation about this when you was on the show, like just about that. So for the folks that missed that, just take me back to March when the school closed, right? When school ended, I guess you could say.
And that whole week was crazy, because at the beginning of the week when schools closed in Indiana, Avon closed. Because remember, we had a case in Avon, and for those that are not in Indy, that's just like suburb off the side of Indianapolis, right? So we're all like, okay, maybe this COVID thing is serious, and we'll see. And then by the time Thursday comes along, the governor's on TV talking about school closed, and we like, what? So we just went from thinking this in the suburbs, we good, to Thursday, like, don't come back to work.
Don't come back to work.
I worked at an IPS innovation school, but we're in an IPS building. It's like, and also y'all badges are cut off. So we mean really don't go back on campus. I was like, whoa. Now, granted, look, I tell people, like, I don't live in my school. So there was nothing in my school building. I was losing people. So I'm like, if the school burned down, it's gone. Like, I don't need that valuables in my house. But it just got crazy because nobody knew really what to do. You had to decide, are we grading this? Are we not grading this? And then it's just like, I'm a parent. So now I got my kids at home trying to lead and manage my teachers from my house and manage my kids. And then I live in Washington Township. So Washington Township was like, well, up until spring break, we're going to do these little flex days. So the work is optional. So my kids know the work is optional. I'm like, well, you need to work. And they just like, okay, mom. So it was just like really challenging. And then think about the internet situation. We're at home. And so you had kids doing packets. And we all know that drill and kill don't get it. So for me, it felt a little bit like chaos. It felt like uncertainty. And then it's a pandemic. People are dying, and Black people are dying at a higher rate. And so it makes you have a lot of fear. And for me, it's just like, I didn't see my parents for a long time in person. And my parents didn't want to get on technology, which really bothered me. So it's just like, I didn't want to see your face, mom and dad. So that was kind of like for me back in March, just chaos and craziness.
I would say I was very shocked when schools closed. That's just something that never happens in Indianapolis, even in the worst weather. I remember a few years back where we had those 7 snow days that tagged on to our winter break, and that in itself was just something that you don't see in these parts. So I was in denial that the school was closed, and one of my coworkers just kept telling me, you need to get ready, we're not coming back to work. And I was just like, we're coming back to work. So I even remember dialoguing with Shantae about whether we would return or not. And I remember that Thursday, March the 12th, watching the newscast, and when they said the schools, it's the doors are shut.
Doors are shut.
It was, I just was very, very surprised by that. And I think that kind of jarred me into reality that the pandemic was more serious than what people realize, because I teach in China in the summers at the University of Science and Technology, Beijing, and I still keep in contact with a lot of my students. So of course I knew that China was shut down pretty much, and how they really responded rapidly to the pandemic, but I just didn't see that happening in the United States. So I think for me, there was a lot of uncertainty as to just, even outside of school, what was going to happen in general in regards to people falling ill and getting sick. I was very concerned with our nation.
I kind of knew that we weren't coming back when we left. I mean, we had a pretty, good preview of what was going to happen from the other countries that got it first. So I knew that once it got here, it was going to be just as bad, maybe even worse, because we weren't going to respond as fast, which is exactly what happened. So when that day came and they were, my school in particular was just like, we're going to send some stuff home just in case. I'm like, oh, so they already know we're not coming back. They just saying that. So kids all run out all crazy saying school's out for the summer, which I understood. But, the way things were being messaged, it was kind of obvious to me, at least, that they were kicking around the idea of not coming back. And I knew that when they said 2 weeks, I knew that was going to be longer than 2 weeks, because it's like the corona doesn't care what your schedule is for when it comes back. It does what it's going to do. And historically speaking, since I do teach history, I know that these things don't disappear in 2 weeks. I knew in 2 weeks it would probably be worse, and it was. In 2 months it was worse. So it won't be gone in October either. We might just be tired of dealing with it, but it won't be gone. So that was kind of my experience. And I think that, it was the spring break around that time. Yeah. So I did think that, like, well, if it was going to happen, this is like a natural breaking point for it to happen, instead of like some, random Tuesday in the middle of like a week. But when I left out of school, I'm like, well, this is it for the year, probably.
Yeah. Listen, I think, Andrew, to your point, it will still be here. But if it wasn't for school, first of all, people are already loosey-goosey with this social distancing anyway. Yeah. Schools are doing the best with social distancing and teaching, healthy habits. Everybody else is just real loosey. I went to Walmart the other day. This lady picked up 3 cucumbers, man. Like, just barehanded all. Just looked at them and put them back. I was just like, oh no, see, like folks is true. But like you all said, I was an optimist. I was like, yeah, we got 3 weeks because we had the week extra, and then our 2-week spring break, we might come back. It was probably like midway through that first week, like that next week we were out. I was like, nah, man. I started watching CNN, and I was like, nah. See, they started tracking numbers. When you start tracking numbers, that's because you know it's about to get bad. And I was like, yeah, we're not going back as far as in person. And then, we all scrambled, to offer something learning, which that's a story for another day about what kids did and did not learn. We all tried our best. And I tell we tried our darndest. Everybody did. It was a wash. I'm just call it what it is. Like, somebody sit there and tell me that we did a great. No, you didn't. The only people that survived online learning were the schools that were already online. That's it, right? Because they had the capacity. So, all right. So, next question: what do you see as the biggest barrier for schools serving Black children when it comes to being successful in online learning? So let's even get away from March, because we're all in schools that have some form of online something, right? So we have an in-person piece, but we have an online piece. What do you guys see as the biggest barrier to serving Black children in online?
I would say specifically Black students it's a little more difficult online to form relationships. And as we know, our Black students, that is a vital part of their education, is to be in relation with the person that is teaching them. So I do find that to be challenged. It's a lot of challenges, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, just to keep it real. But that's one of the ones that I kind of pick up on, because attendance is so poor. That's one of the things that prohibits you from forming relationships. And then some of the students are just so disengaged because it is in an online format and it just feels unnatural. They're not used to going to school via computer. And then they are at home, so there are so many other things to distract them that I just find that it's harder to connect with them online because it feels so limited for some reason. Because like at my school, we're not expected to stay online with them the entire 85-minute class. So, and what I do is I try to get on about 10 minutes early to see who joins me, and they know that I'm on early, so they'll come in and we'll have conversations. They might show me something in their home. Sometimes I have 2 toy poodles. They might want to see one of my dogs. So I just try to combat that issue in that manner. But it is difficult, especially when you don't know those particular students. You've never looped with them. It is kind of difficult.
Yeah, I think that relational piece is the hardest for me too. I mean, I think especially with parents, because some parents just don't believe in online learning. Like, it's just like you call home and you tell them so-and-so didn't get on the internet today. It's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, if she don't get on the internet, she's not going to know anything. It's like, okay. I was like, well, all right. So when you get this report card, I don't want to hear nothing, because especially like I'm teaching math this year. So math, unlike, with history and some of the other things that I taught, nobody had to fail my history class. If you tried hard enough, you were going to pass. With math, you're going to have some students are just going to have deficits that have built up over the years, and they actually need like remediation. Like it's way more important for me to see you and talk to you in math than it is with history. And that's not to say that history is less important, but it's just different. So you have some students, especially if parents aren't engaged, which I'm not the person that is, going to say that there's a reason for everything parents do. Like they have things that they deal with and things like that as well. But I talked to them, and some of them just flat out told me, like, I'm not fooling with that Chromebook. I got other stuff I need to be doing. And I understand, but at the same time, I don't know what you want me to do.
Yeah.
So
I had a parent tell me, because I got a call because your child isn't showing up. And she flat out said, Miss McGuire, online learning doesn't work in my household. What am I going to say? Yes, it should. Like, who am I to judge your household? But
right.
Flat out just said it don't work in my household. I'm like, right now it's the reality of everybody's household. But okay, well, we'll be here every day from these times if you want to show up. But I mean, that's real. So, Shantae, like I said, you juggled coaching teachers, right? But then you had to be a parent, right? You had to be a Black parent with Black children. So, like, what have you seen the biggest barrier?
I think the biggest barrier for me, so this school year, we put our kids into the same class. So we would have one teacher, because juggling 2 teachers during remote learning, and I have twins, so I had that option. I'm like, put them in the same class. One teacher, one schedule, one whatever. Got out my little schedule up on the wall, even put my little anchor chart for my kids. But what's been hard, one of my sons spent a significant part of 3rd grade being kicked out of class. And normally what would happen, he would get frustrated with something, do something, and she's like, get out. So now, like Nikki said, like you have a certain amount of time with the teacher online and then the kids work independently, right? Mm-hmm. So if I'm a teacher, I may use proximity during independent work time to make sure you keep working, or I'm circling around the room aggressively monitoring. But now Johnny's sitting at home working independently. And I realized that my one son had no motivation. He was just going to wait it out to the next live session. And so we've been working, my husband and I have been working with him was like, get up and go, motivation skill. We got a whole chart. This is what you do. You're going to go back and rewatch the live video. Then you're going to get onto office hours. Like we gave him a tangible thing to do. And he's gotten so much better. And because his school went back July 30th, and that's a whole other conversation about how early some of these schools in Indiana go back. But after a few weeks, he's gotten onto it. But the relation piece is key. And my school is K-8, but I supervise middle schools, teachers. And what we forget is when you're in person, you have all that downtime for kids to get to know each other. In the morning, at the lockers, dismissal, walking out of the building, lunchtime, transition time, passing period. We don't have none of that right now. If you're an elementary kid, you don't have recess with people. So now I'm supposed to get an online class. I have no relationship with you, and I'm supposed to interact and get in the breakout room and talk about this stuff. And I think the one pro we had back in March is that we had built relationships up until March. So even though we were online and we had no clue what we was going to do, the kids knew each other. We knew the kids. We were good. Now we have a new set of kids for our grade. We don't know the kids. We're trying to get to know the kids, but we can't get to know them during class because I only can be on here for a certain amount of time and I got to get off. And so I think that's the struggle that we have to figure out. How do we get the kids to get to know each other? How do we get to know them so they'll buy into, like, I care about you. I have to make my son go to office hours. And it's even weird for me to say, like, in fourth grade, you're going to office hours, which is a weird concept for elementary school. But it's like, and he likes the teacher, but he's like, I don't want to talk to the teacher by myself. Like, that's a real thing. He's like, I don't want to talk to her by myself. But I think about it, he hasn't gotten to see her. He hasn't gotten to hug her or meet her in person. So to him, sitting on the computer with an adult who is kind of like a stranger, even though she's not, because she sees them every day, they were uncomfortable talking to her. So that relationship piece is holding back kids a lot.
We're relational people, right?
Yes.
Like, we're relational people. And you can do the best listen, you got teachers that are doing all types of amazing engagement that's all fine and good, right? I'm not going to dismiss that because there's some teachers that are going above and beyond, but nothing beats being in your classroom, putting your kids in a circle and just talking, getting to know each other, play a step to the line and just, whatever. There's nothing that beats that piece. Just obviously can't do this good, but breathing the same air, right? Like, yeah. And so you're going to the same locker, transitioning in the hallway, fist bumping, doing the whole threat. Like, nothing beats that, right? And it's just, it's important and it's hard. And our children, the children we serve, the children that we're raising, it's hard and even for us. And so that piggybacks to our next thought, like us as educators, right? For you personally, right? And because this is a Recess podcast and we're going to be real. What's been the biggest challenge for you as an educator during this time?
So honestly, I think the biggest difficulty really isn't the e-learning. This is way easier for me in terms of like what I have to do on a daily basis. I mean, at my school, most of my job before was managing behavior and then teaching on top of that. Now I'm only getting the kids who want to show up most of the time. So it's really not that difficult. But at the same time, they're not learning anything, right? So I have to go back and forth and weigh the fact that, yes, my job is way easier, but that means that they're learning way less. And because of that, that's what I say makes it harder. It is harder for me to teach well. It is not harder for me to do what I'm expected to do every day. Like, and I feel uncomfortable with, the amount of free time that I have, quite frankly, like, because it's just, I go through, I put the grades in, I check everybody, I'm waiting. Like, how many kids showed up today? 12. All right. So it's just uncomfortable. It's not excessively difficult. And especially with math, I don't get to see what their work is anyway. Right. So I can't go through and look, here's a mistake that you made. All I see is that you got it wrong. I don't know why you got it wrong. So on one hand, that makes less work for me, but on the other hand, it's way worse for the kid. So so the fact that it's more difficult for them is what makes it more difficult for me.
Absolutely. That's it right there. I mean, that's heavy right there.
And I have the opposite experience, Andrew. I have virtual for me has been about 100 times more work. I mean, just every aspect of it, from trying to engage the students. Like, even when I'm teaching to a black screen because nobody wants to turn their cameras on. The camera or the sound doesn't work, so I'm just repeating myself 100 times. I have students that enter the class literally at any point of the 85-minute block. So I'm teaching the lesson multiple times. to the students as they enter. I mean, it has been just overwhelming, just every aspect of it. And not because I can't keep up with the technology. I'm actually fine with that. I just wish that our kids were more knowledgeable with the technology, because like I said, they're very proficient when it comes to recreational technology, but not so much educationally speaking. And it's hard to have that ceremony with your students when you're not face to face. Like, for instance, in class, once a week, I would serve tea. I would fix my students' tea the way they liked it, and everybody loved it. They really loved it. In fact, I had one of my girls this morning, and she's like, "I miss drinking tea with you." You know, we can't do things like that online. And my principal, he makes sure that we stay busy. So if we're not busy with our students, we're busy in other aspects. But I just feel like everything has been a mountain to overcome.
So Shantae, we got the teacher perspective, the challenges. So now you and I, we got the other side of this piece, like, so from that admin, right? With whether it's coaching or leading, like, what's been the biggest challenge for you during this time?
I think for me, it's trying to supervise and then do everything and make sure you're obeying guidelines. I spent most of the summer, because the guidance kept changing, revising documents because, you have to do this, or they have to be this amount apart, or like contact tracing. Now we have to sign in and out of the classrooms when you're there for more than 15 minutes, because K3 is on campus in person, unless they chose remote, and then 4 through 8 is off campus. So for the K3 students that are on campus, if I go into a room to observe a teacher and my special area team, they're K8. So I do have to go in the elementary school for that. If I'm there for more than 15 minutes, I have to sign myself in and out, because if there's a case, it has to be traced who was in this room and for how much time. And so making sure people are doing like little things like that, making sure you sign in, you sign out, did you do this, where were you at? And then managing if someone has a COVID symptom. There's a whole process for if someone has a COVID symptom. And luckily, most of my teachers are remote. So it's like you stay home, get tested, get the test back, you come back. But all of that, and then it's like you have to have some trust, right? Because when I've talked to other administrative friends, some people don't trust teachers. It's like, well, I can't let them work at home, but you don't know what they're doing. And it's like, I know they're doing something. I'm getting all these notifications throughout the night. So I can't judge my kids and say they're not doing anything. Like, I have to have a positive mindset, because I had to tell a coach here, I was like, look, I love y'all, but Barnes is in bed. Like, I'll respond tomorrow. Like, it's just too much. And I think the connection piece is hard. Very first day, I was outside doing bus duty, and a kid got off the bus and tried to hug a teacher. And the teacher went up and like did like an air high five. And that just like broke my heart, because like that was the first time the kid that saw the teacher since March and just wanted to hug and couldn't. And so for me, seeing that kids want to be held by us, want to touch us, and we have all these different non-contact greetings, but it's not the same. And then this managing with the little kids. I had one little boy, kindergarten, I said, cover your nose, pulled it all the way up and covered his eyes and kept walking. I was like, no, you can't see. And then he pulled it all the way down and put it on his mouth, but didn't cover his nose. And I was just like, Lord, not to pull out my middle school, drop the little tone of my voice, this little kindergartner, but like, I need you to cover your nose and your mouth. Like, things like that, I'm just like, woo, Lord, help.
Listen, I think the biggest challenge for me is not being able, I feel like I'm not being able to form the relationships, man. Like, I love my kids, man. And one of my teachers is on here. Shout out to Ashley Hogan, man. Her and I, man, we just love hugging our kids, man. And not to be, like you said, I didn't have to give kids a couple stiff arms. Like, hold up, But then you know what else is hard, that breaks my heart? When they can't hug each other or give each other a high five or like, be too close to each other. Like, I feel like all day I'm the mask police, the hand washing police, and the spacing in the hallway police. And it's just like, it's hard. But, trying to manage, an online session and all that, but just trying to manage like the kids and people, because it's trying to give love in a different way, right? Like air high fives, air fist bumps, elbows and all this other stuff. It's hard, and it's, I don't want to say it's taking the joy away, but some aspects of what makes school beautiful, what makes working with children beautiful, that is being taken away, and that's probably been the biggest challenge for me. So if you're just tuning in, it's a Recess podcast, Surviving Online Learning. So we didn't kind of talk about some mushy stuff. Now we're about to get into some real stuff. So I gotta say, I had this idea of the show, for a couple of weeks because it just like was on my mind. And then I had an opportunity to participate in a Twitter chat that was like, yep, I got to have this show. So Nakia and Shantae hosted this Twitter chat. And Shantae, I'm going to read a tweet of yours because I'm about to give you the solo screen because I got a question. And I want you to provide more context to us what you missed. So in the Twitter chat, and I don't remember what the question was, but you said, truth be told, the virtual setting is exposing the instructional gaps some educators have that's not a technology issue. So I'm gonna call you Solo Screen Barnes. What did you mean by that? That the online is exposing the instructional gaps that the educators have.
So kind of what I was saying about this, why I posted this is because this school year, we are really requiring a lot of teachers to record their Zoom sessions and post them online so students can watch later. Let's say they don't tune into class. So now the parent can actually see the teacher teaching. And I'm hearing from parents saying, I watched the video and I don't know what the kid's supposed to do. And so if the parent is watching you teach and they're like, I don't know what the child's doing, or I don't know what you're talking about, it's like, having a video on shouldn't change the way you deliver instruction. So it's really showing that some teachers could not teach. And so some of the problem for kids not learning is because the teacher cannot teach. And now we got you on tape. So that's why I said what I said.
Listen, hey, you put yourself out there when anytime, like right now, we're putting ourselves out there. But when you press that, like you said, you press that record and you start teaching, and you can't even identify the theme and the lesson that you taught, right? Or Andrew, to your point, like if you teaching math and you fumbling over the problems, like you said, like it does, and that is true. I think you said like because now the parents have true access, right? To that video, and all that time where parents weren't coming into the classroom, they in your classroom now.
Oh yeah, it's like a window into the classroom.
To the class. So. Andrew, the kid, like, what are your thoughts on like this idea, like the instructional gaps of educators being exposed? I mean, your classroom teachers, do you have this fear of your instructional gaps being exposed in online setting, or colleagues that said like, I don't want to record myself and I don't want to, have myself recorded and posted on a platform?
So it's funny you said that because I was just thinking the other day. It's like if this had happened during social studies, I probably would have started a YouTube channel. Okay, I would have had some bomb social studies videos. I'm like, you know what? This is a good opportunity. Go ahead and record everything. I can have this. Kids can go back and watch this on days where they miss class or whatever. So I was just thinking like, man, if this had happened when I was teaching, the class that I really want to teach, this would have been great. But it happened when I'm teaching math, and math is not, my strong area. Now I know more than them, So unfortunately, if I do fumble over something, they don't know, like kids in general are not able to call me out on my mistakes, which is a pro and a con.
Yes.
I can fake it till I make it. But on the other hand, it's like, dang, y'all didn't notice. Y'all weren't gonna tell me that this was a 3 right here the whole time. So it definitely does put your weaknesses on blast. But at the same time, you don't have to put your video out till it's perfect. I mean, I really don't understand why somebody would have a bad video. Like live teaching is one thing. I
done seen some bad.
I've seen them too. And I don't get it. Like, why would you have a bad? Like, you can do this. Like, you look at it and then see that it's bad and do it again. Like, I don't understand how. Like, your quality control should be better for your instructional piece. Yeah, sure. Now, with the live piece, it's like, okay, I get it. Like, stuff happens, technology or whatever. But my videos are on point. My videos, even for math, that I don't know is great because if that's all I'm doing, I took 2 hours to record it. I took 2 hours to do them 15 minutes, so it better be on point. So I have no excuse for people who are putting out bad videos. I just don't get it.
I bet not ever hear one of my teachers tell the kids, hold on, y'all, we're going to start over. I got to re-record because I messed up. You better keep going. Yeah. You better keep going through that loop. Ain't no redos. You can't, we're not about to redo this.
So we record our videos. So y'all don't. We record our videos before the lesson. And
no,
the kids watch the lesson.
No, we record with the kids. Like right now, if I was to say, you know what, y'all, we messed up the show. Let's go back and do it again. No, it's kids and recording.
Y'all record them with the kids.
That is live. Yeah. I do it. I record my videos, but it works for me because I have high schoolers and our attendance is not great at the moment. So therefore, I can upload my video on Schoology and they have access to it. So I'm okay with it. I'm a pro. I mean, I'm not bragging, but I know what I'm doing. I got this, so I'm fine with recording.
So that question about live with students, I think I know where that person's getting at. So when, like, for example, my sons, they're in Washington Township, the teacher recording the math session and the reading session live, and then they're saving it into Canvas, and that's a secure platform where only the kids can log into it. So let me tell you how secure it was. My son was working on the document, and I said, just share it to my email address. He couldn't even share it to me because my email address is not a Washington Township email address. I just to see what he was doing. So when I say it's secure, I mean, my husband is a senior database administrator, so he will tell you that nothing's really secure. And I'm not even going down that little rabbit hole with him. But ideally, it's secure, it's password protected. So you have the situation where we're recording with students, or like what Andrew is saying, they're making the videos beforehand and then posting. So there are actually different, we haven't really talked about that, David, but there's different settings or different ways for even doing virtual instruction and how that's maybe working better for some kids or not for other kids.
Yeah, I think so. Like we same thing. We put ours on Microsoft Stream, and you have to like be a part of like Tinley's Microsoft. Now, I could make the link unprivate and probably share it with the parent if I wanted to, but it's too many hoops for that. But like, there's also, you know, what some people, your kids sign a waiver anyway, right? Do you sign off for your kid to be recorded and have their picture taken, right? So there's that loophole if somebody wanted to do that. But going back to the instructional gaps, listen, I got some great teachers who are great online. I mean, in person, live, like face to face. Trying to navigate that screen, trying to do this, right? And back to this. That's not their ministry, right? So they just need to stay right here. I need you to sit right here and just talk in the camera, because you can do that. But when you start trying to share slides and play videos, that's not your ministry. That ain't it. Doing a whiteboard, that ain't you. Just stick to this. So, all right, Nikki, it's your turn to be on the solo screen. So in that same Twitter chat, you brought up this piece about equity in the online setting, right? So what does it look like to provide equitable education for children in an online setting? I'm gonna give you the solo screen.
Well, definitely in an online setting, equity looks like all students having access to quality Wi-Fi, having quality devices in which to work from. That makes it very difficult when everyone can't access class because they lack the fundamentals. So that is something that we really have to work on in education. And it's not about equality, because that deals with treatment of people, but we need to have it to where our students can succeed because they have those tools that they need to succeed. And every student doesn't need the same tools, but as far as the district that I work in, the technology aspect, the technology deficit is certainly an issue that we have that is preventing our education at the moment from being equitable.
So I want to provide some context to those listening, whether they're in Indy or not in Indy. So we all teach the same students, right? So like, I'm a charter school in an IPS district. Nakia, you're at an IPS school. Andrew's the same thing. Shantae's the same thing. We're in districts that serve IPS students, which is our Indianapolis public schools. And this is a big piece, right? when you got Shantae and Andrew, when you think about equitable, right, in an online setting, what does that look like for your students in your school and just students in general, right? Like, what does that look like for us to do that for our students, our children?
I would say at my school is 75% English language learners. So that's another layer to our situation. So you're not only talking about having access to technology, you're talking about having access to supports to help you understand what's happening. I went into a breakout room this week with a student who I knew it was a language barrier, and the teacher was checking for understanding, said thumb up, and the girl just sat there with her little hands clasped and just kept nodding. And I knew she wasn't understanding. And the teacher said, well, Shantae, will you go in the breakout room? And I'm like, yeah, I'm an administrator, but I'm going to go and teach. Like, if there's no point in time, and I made it clear to my teacher, if y'all need me to go in and pop in the room, I'm going to pop in the room. I'm not here just to observe you. I'm here to help. And so, working with that student, we were able to help the student understand what the assignment was. But that's a whole other level. So now you're talking about trying to get you to understand academic content in a language that's not your native language through a screen. And then you may be in the situation where you're in a household where there's multiple children trying to be on the computer at the same time. You have bandwidth issues, and you'll see kids drop out and then they get put back in because they got kicked off the internet at their house. And so they missed that lesson. And if you're teaching to the whole class, you can't necessarily stop every time someone gets kicked off because of the Wi-Fi. So now how do you go back and catch up that kid? And so we're talking about kids having gaps from March. Now we're talking about they're having gaps because they couldn't stay on the technology. So when I think about equitable education, we have to figure out a way how to even that's bringing them to the school. And I know they're not supposed to be on campus or somewhere where we can kind of work with them and get those supports, because we're trying as hard as we can, but I know we still have gaps.
Definitely.
Yeah, I think that when you think about equity, there's an obvious technology piece that people hit on often, but then there's also the general gaps that just come from, being disenfranchised in America. So if you think about it from the perspective of being a teacher, we have the only job, the only profession where most of our customers want to get ripped off, right? And this provides a setting where if you don't want to come to school, you won't have to. And everybody doesn't have some mom at home, who's like a homemaker that can sit there and say, you need to get on here, you need to do this. Everybody doesn't have, the support system that is going to make e-learning successful, particularly if the child is not extremely invested in himself, because it's work. It wasn't work to do school before. Like, it was work at school, but it didn't require anything of you to participate in school. Now, kids sometimes have to go above and beyond to participate in school. Their modem's not working. They got to call home. They got to call this. They got to call tech support. There's a lot of barriers, and not every kid's going to feel engaged in jumping over them. And that's the honest truth. And I think that's an equity piece. We don't often think about it because obviously inner city kids are not the only ones that try and get out of doing work. But my kids are going to be more successful with that than, say, the kids in the neighborhood where I live, because I come home some days and everybody outside mowing their grass, people just home. My kids' parents are like frontline workers. They don't have jobs where they're working from home. I have like a few kids that, their parents are at home with them, but for the most part, they're by themselves. And I'm pleasantly surprised that as many of them, come up and make the effort as they do. Really, it's honestly pretty impressive. So I think that's where the equity piece comes into me, is the support system that you have to make sure you're getting all this work done, because everybody just doesn't have that.
Andrew, that is so important that you said that, and I agree. And I was even thinking about one of my students. She told me she didn't want to turn her camera on because she said, I really don't have anywhere to work in my house. She was like, I'm just really anywhere. I don't have anywhere to sit my computer. I have people in my house. I don't want to wake them up, so I have to kind of whisper. And she was like, it's just really awkward for me to work from home. So we don't even consider things like that they just simply don't have a space in which to interact with school right now.
Yeah, we're all on social media, right? And what was when it was like late June, early July, mid-July, what was the most popular thing on social media? All these parents who decorated these spaces for their children for online learning. I done seen parents buy desks, put calendars, set up whole mini stations, right, to prep their child for e-learning. Kids got a box with pencils and crayons and notebooks and brand new MacBooks and all this stuff, right? And then our babies, like you said, you know why they're in their bed, in their blanket? Because that's probably the nicest space they got. And because, you know, I am a pro camera on person, right? They're like, you know what, I got to go. That's the best space. Or this little corner with this white wall, right? Or whatever, that's real cramped. Like, that's the best space for me and the most comfortable space for me, you know, because like you said, there's people in the house or things like that. But, you know, to me, and that's the thing about equity, because I've, you know, and I like those pictures too. They're nice to see, but it also hurts me because I know kids who ain't got none of that, right? It's that, what was that movie with Hillary Swank where the little boys reading a book with a lamp, a little light, right? One of those books, you know.
Freedom Riders.
Yeah, Freedom Riders, right? But it's like that. Like these kids, that's what these kids are in. Like, and Echo was just kids having a working computer. Let's not even go there, right? Because, you know, everybody was buying technology, so you're just getting it from every which way. And kids having internet and kids being taught what we talked about, the digital, being digitally literate, right, in this space. And so all that plays a part. But sometimes those pictures on social media are nice, but sometimes it breaks my heart because I think about my kids. Like, my kids don't have that opportunity, right? And like, to your point, Andrew, so you go on something like, people are just home, and just home, and they can make their kids get in front of the computer. But I want to put up a question to get you guys' thoughts. So my boy Dr. Smith, who's with me on the AOS podcast, says, I want to push back. What were teachers doing when kids were coming in late, off task, etc.? What did teachers do in person to catch those students up?
I think that's in response to what I said. I will say that the particular teacher I mentioned is a first-year teacher. So for that particular teacher wasn't doing anything. It was just kind of new to us. So that's why I kind of went in and kind of tag team. But I do say, I do agree with that pushback, that there are things that we did in person that we can do online, and it could be circling back. I watched a veteran teacher who a student was struggling. So she had all the kids on Zoom. She had all their Google Docs pulled up on her screen so she could see what they were doing. And then she was hopping into each Google Doc, giving them comments, and then chatting with each one. So that's a veteran teacher versus a brand new teacher. And so right now, my goal is to not only, and that's the thing about new teachers, if this is your first year teaching, you didn't even have that. And think about this, student teaching for you might have been remote. So you have really not had an opportunity potentially to even teach in person, besides maybe observation that you did in college. That's if you did the 4-year track versus like TFA or ITF or a non-traditional track. So right now I'm trying to help build that content knowledge on top of trying to give them some tools and tips of how you catch up students or they don't have the skills that they need to have.
Absolutely. All right. So, Andrew, it's your turn, my friend. So I got to kind of play tech now because I got to get this queued up for you because you posted an interesting blog that I thought was intriguing. I want you to touch on this. So I'm going to put this on our screen. Hope the folks can see it. There it is. So if you haven't visited our website, hint, Indy.education, K-12, we are your go-to for education in Indianapolis for the Black community. Shout out to all those that are, writing about education. But I will say the past, with the exception of this year, because now everybody wants to write blogs, it only been Indy K-12 and Chalkbeat in Indianapolis. I love the folks at the Recorder. Shout out to the people at the Recorder. But y'all just started back writing about education. And I get it because it's a hot button topic. But we were doing this when nobody really paid us attention. But anyway, that's a shameless plug. Go check us out. Anyway, Andrew, school districts are not equipped to close the digital divide. That was the piece. So, brother, and I want folks to go out and read it. So as you talk about it, I don't want you to share too much because I want folks to go check it out. But I'm going to give you the solo screen. I want you to just kind of give us, what was your thought process when you wrote it? What did you mean by it? And honestly, the main question is, what do you think about schools in Indianapolis with, closing the digital divide? So just kind of talk to us about the article and, man, give us your thoughts.
So basically, this is in reference to the digital divide that has existed way before, Corona happened. Corona just exposed the gap that had been there for years. I remember having a computer when I was in middle school and not really knowing how big of an advantage it was until, kids had to type papers. And I would do it at home and I would come in my floppy disk or whatever, and kids would have to wait in line at a computer or whatever, because only like 2 computers in the classroom. So the digital divide's always been there, but now school is online, right? So if school is online and school is a right, then that really changes the way we need to think about the internet entirely. Because right now the internet is run by, private companies and things like that. But if public education is online, then maybe the internet should now be considered a public utility, like the electric company, the water company, and things like that. And there is precedent for this. I mean, so if you go back and look at the Great Depression and you go to Appalachia and Eastern Tennessee, Eastern Kentucky, places like that, they actually did this thing called the Tennessee Valley Authority. And that's where they came in. They wired the area for electricity, water, infrastructure, and things like that. What they didn't do was say, hey, Chattanooga Public Schools, take care of all this water and electricity for your area. Make sure everybody in the Appalachian Mountains gets what they need, because it takes a massive influx of government money to make those things happen, right? And what we've done is we have left this problem, and the digital divide is a 30-year-old problem, basically. We've let this problem fester, and now that we need everybody to have access, we've said, hey, IPS, make sure everybody get internet. That doesn't make any sense. Like, that's an act of Congress right there, not an act of Alicia Johnson, right? Now, she's going to do her best. Everybody's going to do their best. But a lot of schools are struggling to, teach well, right? Some of them don't even do that. Now they've got to distribute wireless hotspots. They're the nation's #1 provider of Chromebooks and things like that. So the idea that schools should be closing the digital divide by themselves just because they're the arena that's most effective right now is asinine, but that's what we're doing. The internet at this point, if public education is on the internet, then the internet's a public utility, and that should be a national initiative, not a local one that IPS is trying to solve themselves.
Absolutely. So I saw a tweet from Eric Weddle with WFY. It said, Indiana announces a $51 million for 50 broadband infrastructure expansion project. And it said that this is what students are facing this school year. It says they believe up to 84,000 students in Indiana don't have access to internet. And so I think, pushing the money to it. But my question is this. It seems, and I could be wrong, so either y'all correct me, it seems like our way, meaning Indianapolis' way of closing this digital divide, is just throwing money at it, right? Like, just drop some money on it.
It's terribly inefficient. I mean, you're doing hotspots, which aren't, like as someone mentioned in the comments, aren't really that effective. It's an infrastructure problem that needs to be fixed, right, from the ground up. You need to be wiring fiber through places and things like that. And I will say that at least here we have the tax base to try. A lot of rural areas, because sometimes we leave rural areas out of this conversation too. A lot of rural areas are completely, left out of this. They don't have any infrastructure for internet, and they don't have, wireless service either. So I will say that even though what we're doing isn't the most efficient way, it's probably the only way they can think of right now, short of actually coming in and building the infrastructure, which is something the government needs to do. I mean, other countries don't have this problem. Like South Korea doesn't have this problem. Like, this is an infrastructure issue that should have been taken care of years ago. And now we're trying to put a Band-Aid over a problem that is, literally as old as the internet itself.
I participated in a conference over the summer, the I believe ASDC perhaps, and the superintendent from, I want to say the Topeka school system, she came up with very creative ways to address that issue. She had buses parked through various neighborhoods where the kids could pick up a Wi-Fi signal. They partnered with churches so that students could actually go there and pick up the Wi-Fi. So sometimes we have to look at outside sources and try to involve the community as well, because as you pointed out, Mrs. Johnson, she can't fix the issue alone, and she really shouldn't have to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've appreciated the one thing I think this I've really loved the city has done is the community e-learning hubs that they have popping up, right? Like that's a step in the right direction, right? Mm-hmm. But I think we've all said it. Why did it take a global pandemic for us to have a community resource center for kids to go learn? Like, and I'm coming from a school that suspends the hell out of kids, right? Like we should have been doing this for kids to get suspended from school, right? So yeah, you suspended from my school today, but you going to First Jesus AME Church, and you gonna have school there, right? But it took a global pandemic for us to think that way, and we've all been guilty of it. But like, hopefully, right? And I talked about it in the last show, like the education this time. When we come on the other side of this, because I think we all believe that we will come on the other side of this. Now, what it looks like, whatever. But when we come on the other side of this, we cannot lose the creativity. Andrew, to your point, when we come on the other side of COVID and schools go back to normal, doesn't mean that all the conversations about building the infrastructure for Wi-Fi and internet should just disappear. Like, well, I guess we don't need it now. No, we still do. Because like you said, it should be just a public service, just like everything else. And so I definitely agree. But the question is, will people have that same energy when we're not facing, some of the barriers that we're facing now?
David, that's what I'm really afraid of. People are really starting to romanticize what we had before. And what we had before was not good either. It just wasn't as exposed in the situation that we had.
Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing that we're missing is, let's say in this fantasy world, the infrastructure gets built over the next year. The other thing that's not built into a lot of schools, when I think about urban schools or schools that serve predominantly Black kids or kids of color, is that did we set up kids to use the technology? So like to my job, I was a library media specialist. So my kids, 3 through 6, were one-to-one with Chromebooks. And it was my job when they came to the library to do digital literacy, and they did skills. They typed, they did all this stuff. The school I'm at now, kids got on technology when they took their assessments. They got on technology to take a test. They didn't get to use technology. Even when I taught in Wayne Township, I was a teacher in Wayne Township before I was a librarian. For 5 years, my middle school kids had Chromebooks. So I almost had a paperless classroom. And this is back like early, what was that, 2009, 10. And I had a paperless classroom, and my kids knew how to use technology versus my students who got a Chromebook to use on their own. And I think about my sons, they're in 4th grade and they don't know how to type, but everything they do is a written submission. So I'm watching them peck type, and granted, we're on typing.com and learning.com doing typing stuff now, but we don't even think about the actual time it takes a kid to sit there and peck type in their assignments. And we're talking about high school kids still sitting here peck typing. Because if they did have access to technology previously, it was a cell phone or a tablet. It wasn't a computer. So even if we get that, we have to make sure that the schools have access to technology classes or media class. We're teaching them digital citizenship, because some kids don't understand if you say the F word in the chat's being recorded. So now you're caught. Like they don't even have the digital footprint. There's like so many things that our kids were set up as a deficit before we even started online learning that we're going to have to catch up, after we get the infrastructure.
Yeah.
Shantae, I think that ties in again to equity, because every school is not a one-on-one school. Some kids don't have a laptop and an iPad at home and 25 other different devices. Even at the school that I teach at, we're not technically a one-on-one school. I am fortunate enough where I have my own cow, but I have to share it with others. So we don't even always have those devices. And I've also noticed that computer education is not really a important thing anymore, which is very odd considering we live in a quite digital age. So you are right. We do have to teach them how to navigate the technology. But if you don't have working viable technology and one-on-one technology, it's difficult to do that.
Shantae, when you were talking about that, it made me think about my plans for my school. So the first step was, even before the pandemic, I said, "Hey, we got to have a counselor, right? Like our school needs a school counselor." You know what? The other thing I wrote underneath the school counselor when I wrote about the things I wanted to add, I want to build a media center so our kids can have a media class or time where they can do those things, learn how to type, but also, Nikki, because I taught at a high school. Our kids don't even know how to search the internet appropriately for resources. But you go to like Carmel and those kids can access, they know how to search for an article to write a paper. But our kids, because we didn't have that option, right? They didn't have that class. They didn't go to a media class. They didn't have, like Shantae mentioned, a media specialist who would go there and say, this is how you search for a book when you look for a title, you look for the book number. Our kids go to the library and they say, where can I find a Michael Jordan book? Right? Like, and they direct them, instead of saying, get on the website and search by the genre, search by the thing. Like, it's all those things that our kids don't get exposed to. But to your point, if we're going to add internet, we need to add that piece as well. I agree.
I have to brag for a moment because our media specialist is awesome. I mean, he actually does all of those trainings. We have a virtual library at my school. Like, you can actually go to the virtual site. If you have a question for him, you type it, he'll appear on the screen. So he actually does a lot of training. And here recently, we've become a part of the shared branch of the Indianapolis Public Library System. So that's been a gift in and of itself. So I can say that we do have a very highly qualified media specialist who actually does conduct those types of trainings with our students.
And that's good because not many kids, like not many high schoolers, especially in Indianapolis, are getting that piece, right? They have the media center there as a space. But they're not getting some of the things you talk about. Some of the things you talk about is what our students need for sure.
Yes. Definitely.
And when you think about it, this doesn't matter just for school. Like if you in the business world and you type 20 words per minute and you're going up against someone who types 80 words per minute, you are a third less the person. Like you are, like, from a metric standpoint, why would I hire you when your production is a third of this other person? And that's a real thing, because I was a journalism major, so typing slow, I just didn't, even in college, like if I was working with somebody, I just didn't have any patience for somebody who was typing slow. I'm like, well, are you doing this? You need to go. Like this is not going to work. So it's definitely, at this point, they're life skills. I mean, technology is today. Technology class is today what home ec was in like the 40s, and honestly probably even more important because even in the 40s we were moving away from home ec, right? But but we're not moving away from technology, we're moving towards it.
That kind of makes me think of the fact how teaching handwriting is not mandatory anymore. So it's like they can't write in cursive, they can't type properly. I didn't have some of my students say, why do you type so fast? Like
listen, I mean, in some spaces, Black kids can't read, they can't write, and they can't type. Like, damn, shoot.
They can't do arithmetic. So
can't do math, right? Like, and that's real. No, that's real.
Yeah.
So we're getting to the end, but so we're gonna close out. This is how we're gonna close out. So our last question, and I want each of you, and I give you time to think. So I'll talk really slow as I'm thinking too. But I want us, as we close out, we're gonna leave folks that are watching this live, that watch it later. Leave folks with tips. So I want us to give one tip to parents, to educators, and to students on how we're going to be in this online space. So a tip for a parent, a tip for a student, and a tip for educators. Who wants to just go ahead and jump in and go first? This sounds like an indie K-12 blog.
So I can give you so if you're a parent, the main tip that I would say is you have to be super invested. And I understand that you have other stuff going on. Like, I get it. But at the same time, this is not the way school is normally conducted. And when they're in the building, I can pretty much make sure that they're doing what they're supposed to do. I can't do that at home. I can't make them log on. So to the best of your ability, you have to really stay up on your children. For the students, like, my tip is that you really have to try every assignment. Because so many times kids just get lost, and there's nothing worse than a 0 in a grade book. I just put grades in today, and it's like, this student didn't even try this assignment. And it's the same as it is like in the regular setting. But for whatever reason in digital learning, when you have the assignments listed like this, they look at it like it's a menu. I'm gonna do this one, then not that one. I'm gonna do this one. Like, no, you still, if everything I put up there, you still need to do. It's not Burger King. And for teachers, you really need to make sure that your station where you're working is set up right. So I still see teachers working from one screen. Like, I got 3 screens up here. I don't know if y'all can see, right? I got 3 screens plus the laptop screen. Like, from a productivity standpoint, like going back and forth between windows, it just don't work. So go get another screen. Like, that's a very practical tip for another teacher. I actually think I wrote an article about it, but go get another screen.
Go get another screen. Absolutely. Who wants to go next?
I'll go next.
Okay.
I would say for parents, partner with your teachers, your students' teachers, so that you can stay in the know and in communication, and just be aware of what your child is doing or not doing online. For students, I would say develop intrinsic motivation. That's a very important muscle, especially in this time and space that we're living in. And for my fellow educators, I would say continue working on building those relationships. Relationships will take you far. And that's just not in education. That's just generally speaking in life. You can get so much more out of students when that relationship piece is there.
Love it. Love it.
All right. So for parents, kind of to what everyone else says, you have to do a little bit more than you did previously. In my home, I put up a schedule. Part of the reason I put up the schedule, I actually work remote part of the day, and then I go into the school. And so my husband and my schedule overlaps by an hour, so we can switch off because my kid's district is 100% remote. So having that schedule on the wall allows us to switch back in between to be like, oh, who's doing what? And then also reach out to the school. The second thing I would say for parents, I know I'm supposed to give one tip for each, but this is important. Let your child fail. And what I mean by this is don't feel like you have to give them the answers or overly talk. Like, I looked at some of my son's work. It wasn't perfect, but if the teacher can't see the gaps that your child has and it's just what you know, then they can't remediate and help them close those skill gaps. For students, you need to try. Even if you don't know the answer, try turn something in. Try to find a quiet place where you can work. And if you need help, ask for it. Go to the office hours, because the cool thing about office hours, you get that one-on-one time that you may not get previously in person or as much of it. And then to fellow educators, I'm going to give a teacher lens and an admin lens. The fellow educators, take care of yourself. You cannot be burning the midnight oil, working around the clock. You need to take care of yourself. And then to administrators, anything you're asking teachers to do, you need to know how to do it. You need to know how to model it. And you also need to not put so much on teachers' plates as that they can't keep up. Make sure you're giving them time to internalize, to learn a new technology. Don't just throw a new technology and say, use this, and don't prep them to use it.
Love it. Love it. Yeah. I'm going to give myself the solo screen because it's going to be awkward looking at myself. But I'm going to say this. For the students, and I say this with the utmost love from somebody who believes, right, that you are the next generation. You got to do this damn work, because they're not going to give a dang about this COVID and this pandemic when you trying to compete for those same seats of those students that already had a leg up on you. So I'm telling you right now, don't use this time as an excuse. Get your butt up wherever you need. Ask your parents, ask your teachers, ask your school, ask your pastor, ask somebody to help you get the resources you need, because no one's going to care 2-3 years from now that you suffered during COVID-19, and you should not set yourself up that first. So that's my message to the students. To the parents, get in these teachers and these schools' ass, and everybody, if they not giving your child what they need, be on their head. I said this when school was in person. You need to be on their head. So as we talked about this infrastructure, this digital divide, they're hearing it from us, educators. They tune us out. But when y'all start putting pressure on elected officials and things like that in schools to push that, that's when things happen. So parents, we need you. And to educators, and I love y'all, and I love us, and I love we. Don't take this so goddamn serious. And I'm talking to the principals who want to be online police. I'm going back to that article. That bothered me. Like, don't be the online police, right? Like, your job as a principal, my job right now is to make sure my teachers are good, right? So whether that's in person, because I'm the one that needs to be policing the mass. I'm the one that's supposed to be checking in on them. I'm supposed to be saying, hey, when we check in, do a lunch duty, do a jump in for a class. You know what? Let me teach this, right? Let me take 5 minutes. That's your job as an administrator. And to my educators, teachers. Shantae said it best. Take care of yourself. Love yourself. Listen, Cat Williams said it best. Be in tune with your star player. You got to know when you're tired. You got to know when you're worn down. Because even now, when you try to fight through being tired and worn down, that's how you get sick. And it's nice to have you right now in August and September, but I need you in December, January, and February, and March, and April, and so on and so forth. So don't wear yourself out. So those are my tips. And so I want to thank y'all, those that joined us and watched us.
I got to cut you off because remember you said we were going to close with Chadwick.
Oh yeah, listen,
Yeah.
I'm gonna go first. Listen, man. I'm gonna say this. Listen, everybody put out the post about, like, you know, he played the role of Black Panther, but to know that this man has stage 3 colon cancer in the peak of his career. If you look at where his career took off, 42 and Marshall, Black Panther, like all those movies happened in that, and he did all of that by fighting the disease. But I want to say this, and shout out to his circle who kept that quiet. We all need friends like that. I think his work will speak for itself, not just Black Panther, but what he meant, I think, to those that knew him and those that followed his work. So definitely a loss, not just for the Hollywood industry, but I think just for the Black culture in itself. That's my 2 cents on that.
I mean, I had a lot of thoughts about it because colon cancer on my dad's side of the family, my grandmother, a lot of her siblings had it. So for me, when I read it, like really hit home, and they had it younger in their life. And so to me, I just think about it really amplifies the inequities of like the age that you have to be to typically even get the test for it. And then even if you have family history to even fight to get it when you're younger. And so to think about the fact that he passed at 43 and then he had it, you know, at 39, you know, you typically don't get the test in your 30s. And I just turned 37 about a week ago. So just thinking about that, I kept that in my mind. The other thing I thought about, and that's why I said, take care of yourself. I've needed to have a hysterectomy for a while. I knew that. And I have been putting it off. I'm actually going to have it during the school year. And I was like, oh, I'm going to wait till the summer. I went to the doctor. My doctor looked me in my face and read my medical history for every single procedure I've had to deal with like the physical pain I've been in. And I was like, look, I can't do this anymore. And so now I said, dang it, Shantae, you're up in the daggone pandemic about to go and have a surgery. And you could have took care of it a while ago. So to me, it was like a wake up call. Like you really need to take care of yourself because you could be gone tomorrow. And let me tell you, that school will keep trucking along whether you show up or not. They're going to put somebody else in that space. So I appreciate all that he did. Like I truly appreciate all that he did. But I also like shout out to his circle because we all know if he would have disclosed that, he wouldn't have got those roles. And that's the sad part about it. Like you can't even be honest about how you're feeling. And when I even shared about like I was going to have this surgery, there are some people treating me with cat gloves right now. Like I'm just going to break. And I'm like, I've been dealing with chronic pain for 20 years. So I'm not just going to fall over because I revealed it. I'm just telling y'all I won't be out for a few weeks. You know what I'm saying? So for me, I get why he didn't share nothing with anybody because of how you get treated and how opportunities get taken away. Or can you do this, Shantae? Or I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Like I'm going to be good regardless of it. So those are all the thoughts I kind of had about it.
That's powerful.
Well, his death really resonated with me. And I'm not really a big movie person, so I've actually only seen Black Panther, which I loved. I thought he was just beautiful and majestic in the movie. And I also have a son named Chad, and I'm also a cancer survivor. So just the fact that he was able to work during that time, it just really just tore my heart out of my chest. Like oh my goodness. And I've actually even just and Shantae and I talked about this a little bit about the fact that the people that knew he had it, they kept that secret for him. Even when I was going through my experience with cancer, I chose not to tell anyone at work. However, one of my boss at the time, he told 3 of the secretaries. And one of the secretary's daughter was in my class, and she ended up telling a student that didn't like me. So for the remainder of the year, she attempted to bully me about having breast cancer. And I ended up having a conference with the student's mother, and she was so insensitive about it. And she told me that I was being immature because I lived, so she didn't understand the big deal about me not wanting people to know. So when I heard that, that his people didn't leak a word out about it, I just was amazed that just that alone just amazed me. And I'm thankful that he had those type of people around him, because when you're dealing with something that severe, you need those kind of people. You need that support. You need that cushion and protection. You really do. So I'm grateful for his life and his legacy. And somebody said it so beautifully that he made sure that Black Panther didn't die. We can watch him any day of the week if we so do so. So that legacy is going to live on with us forever.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think the thing that resonates with me the most about it is the fact that he was almost a superhuman in real life, more so than on the screen. To be completely honest, like in terms of what he did, the movie is actually now the least impressive part about all of it. I mean, and that's just amazing to think about, that you could be in something that influenced culture that much. And, when you die, the thing people are talking about is like, not that. It's like, man, I didn't even know, and the other thing is that you just never really know what somebody else is going through either. One thing I'll never forget is how people were so insensitive about his weight loss, and pictures that had come out about him, and people were making fun of him and saying all kind of things. And then there was the other side of people who were making up stuff and didn't really know, well, he's losing this weight for a role. And, nobody really knew what was going on. So you just never really know what somebody's going through. And that's just something to think about in terms of life.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So this has been the Recess Podcast. Again, I want to appreciate you all for jumping on with me. It was fun. I think, again, like this surviving online learning is ever going. So I think there's going to be a time. I probably in a couple of weeks, I'm going to replay this video again, listen to it, because there was something that was dropped in there that we needed to hear. And so, again, thank everybody for tuning in. Like this, share this when we get it posted. But this has been a Recess Podcast. Like I always say, create the platform, control the conversation, change the culture. I'm going on hiatus on the Recess Podcast. I'll be back October 1st. But I do got some thoughts. So I'm going to be writing some blogs, and we got some stuff happening with IndyK12. So go follow us on Twitter, like our blog, support us, and support this movement and fight for those that need it. And like we all said, with everything that I think Chadwick Boseman represented, I think it's important that we find those people in your circle that you can trust, and also not just that, but be that trust in somebody else's circle too. So I appreciate everybody. Have a good day, everybody. We appreciate you tuning in, and I'll see you October 1st. It's been a Recess Podcast. Peace.
Thank you.